So I know that we promised we wouldn't buy each other anything for Christmas this year, but I went ahead and got you something.
Oh, I mean, you didn't have to do that. We said we weren't going to buy each other Christmas presents this year.
I know, but this was like totally up your alley.
Okay. What is it?
Okay, so I got you 12 low-budget Christmas horror movies. One for each day of Christmas.
Oh, you shouldn't have.
I did.
Something tells me you really shouldn't have.
On the 12th day of Christmas, I got a bad movie. Let's start this one off from 2018, and one that you may not immediately take as a Christmas film, and it's Lake Alice. The box art does play it up a touch by saying that it's a holiday theme, and it's about a family heading up to the lake for Christmas, and Sarah has invited her new boyfriend up to their cabin on Lake Alice Road. As they settle in, Ryan switches up the mood by proposing, and Sarah says yes, much to the dismay of her father, as well as her old friend Tyler, who she had previously had a thing with. But then it seems like everyone in town is harboring some sort of secret. There's tension between Dad and the police, and the neighbor, and a girl has gone missing from a nearby bar, and even Ryan seems to have some sort of dark side to him. Things stay mainly in the whole family drama territory for a good portion of the runtime. Like this movie is only an hour and 20 minutes long, and there's really nothing horror related until around the 45-minute mark. But then, violence starts as a masked man with an axe shows up and kicks things off, and things veer directly into masked slasher territory, and the twists come fast and furious. And, in terms of, the whole Christmas feeling, this one isn't too over the top. It's definitely the backdrop, and the gift-giving and such play into it all, but it's not the overall theme of things. So if you're looking for that Jingle Bell vibe, you're not getting it as much here as compared to the films that we're going to see on the rest of this list. And this was directed by Ben Milliken, who seems to mostly be an actor and has appeared in a number of things, including a reoccurring role on Bosch. And this was his feature directorial debut, although he'd only direct one other film after this. And this one throws out all those possible lines and about a dozen red herrings, only to be kind of like a pretty standard finale that just treads all too familiar grounds. On the 11th day of Christmas, I got a bad movie. This next one's going to be a strong 180 since the title is super Christmassy, and it's 2022's The Killing Tree, which was also called The Demonic Christmas Tree. So, way more Christmas right away. Which opens with a woman lamenting the death of her husband, who was a serial killer. He was captured and executed, which she's, kind of bummed about. So she casts a spell over a Christmas tree in order to get her revenge. But she misinterprets it, and he's actually brought back into the tree, a fact that he's not very pleased about. He's trying to get revenge on those that testified against him, and oh man, Sarah Cohen is in this. And here's the thing, I have never seen a single film with her in it that I've really enjoyed. But she's not to blame. She's actually a pretty good actress. She's always decent in the movies, but the movies themselves are just never, ever that good, so that doesn't give me high hopes on this one. Faith here is trying to get over the events of last year, in which she survived the attack by Clayton, and he's this tree now, trying to find his way to Faith's house, and discovering that he can shoot branches out to kill people. Meanwhile, Faith is having a Christmas party at the house with a bunch of friends, and hilariously, you can see the guy in the tree costume's feet. It starts to attack the party, coming after those that are outside first, throwing out some one-liners, and yeah, I'm getting the impression that before making this movie, they saw Jack Frost, because it's essentially the same exact plot. And hey, you can see the shoes all the time, so I guess the tree is just supposed to have shoes on. Although sometimes it's walking on branches, so I figure it has to do with how much money they felt like spending on that specific animation. Oh, also, it really likes ripping people in half, but it makes sure to do it the exact same way every time, so they don't have to make a new animation model. But anyway, this one is by Reese Frake Waterfield, the guy who right after this would make Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey, and this has a similar vibe as that one, and it probably should be sillier and not take itself so seriously, but instead, it does. And it ends up being not quite serious enough to be a serious film, but not goofy enough to be a fun camp fest, and lands somewhere in the middle. It has some moments that are solid fun, and I did like Marcus Massey hamming it up as the tree, but it has a very strange ending that doesn't make a ton of sense. On the 10th day of Christmas, I got a bad movie! Our next entry, I think, has a touch higher budget, but I say that solely because Jeffrey Combs is on the cover, although I'll be willing to bet he'll be in about 5% of it, and it's 2019's Holiday Hell. A woman walks into a curiosity shop run by Agent Dammers himself, and she's looking for a special present for her sister. He says that all of the objects in the shop have a story, and she asks about a mask that's up on the wall, and he says it belonged to a little girl they called Dollface. And then we see the story, since this is actually an anthology film. And the first story is a bunch of younger people partying in an abandoned house. And it's an anniversary, and it doesn't quite seem to be around Christmas time. And these are actual young people who talk like actual young person, and not a person who has only seen young people on TV.
Anyways, it's a good place to touch on your body.
Kenny's not that hard to look at. Plus, I hear he's got a nice penis.
OMG.
And it looks like the house isn't as abandoned as they thought. And then the second story is about a little rabbi doll, and is actually set around a holiday, since it's a Hanukkah tale, and a little boy gets the doll as a gift right before his parents go on vacation and leave him with a babysitter. Turns out that she's been planning on ripping the family off along with her boyfriend, who is in no way, shape, or form a cartoon caricature. And the kid asks the doll for help, so it comes to life. The next story revolves around a bloody Santa suit, like the kind that you normally see at a store, right? This segment is about a husband and dad who's picked up by his wife, and it's Frank from God Bless America, and he's asked to play Santa on the night of the big office party, and gets pushed too far and gets a little holiday revenge. And there's then a final section that's sparked by the customer's ring, and it's a woman renting a room with this strange woman, and of course they seem to have some sinister plans for her, and the town hides a secret. And there's this sort of trend going on right now with horror anthologies, and there are some that just sort of find a bunch of random shorts on YouTube or whatever, and then make a wraparound to introduce them, and then they just put that out, and it's pretty minimal effort. But this one appears to be films that were shot specifically for it, so that's a step above, I suppose. But I will admit that the whole holiday theme is a little iffy, particularly because the first and last segments don't seem to really be holiday focused or even feature a holiday in them. On the 9th day of Christmas, I got a bad movie! This next one looks super Christmas oriented, and it's 2018's Sick for Toys. And it's got Roy here, who has some dating troubles, and his friend has gone missing. His friend that is like someone went to the store and asked for Bradley Cooper, and they were like, no, we're sold out of Bradley Cooper, but they had one from some off-brand company, and they were like, yeah, okay, fine, we'll take it. In trying to find his buddy Jason, he encounters a woman named Amelia and asks her out, and they meet up, and she's pretty Christmas obsessed and also talks about her brother a lot. But she's also got a dark secret and acts like a child, and oh, yeah, has Jason tied up and captive at her house. They're both torturing him because Amelia likes her toys, and they invite Roy over for dinner, and sure enough, things start to get creepy and awkward. There's then twists and turns thrown fast and furious as the holiday kicks into high gear, and this was the directorial debut for David Del Rio, who is primarily an actor and one known for kid stuff, as he was a prominent character on the Nickelodeon show The Troop. But he was also in the first Pitch Perfect movie, and this would be one of 2 films that he's directed that had a horror vibe to it, and both were written by Justin Xavier, who plays the role of Jason in this one as well. The problem with it, though, is that there's really only about 5 people in this movie, and the only one that seems like a decent human being is only in it for about 3 minutes, and I'm really not sure who I'm supposed to be rooting for here, but I will say this: it's got a lot of Christmas going on. Although, that being said, it doesn't seem like Christmas stuff is integral to the plot, really. Like, you could set this on any holiday where someone gets presents, in terms of a story. Like, you could change just a small handful of details, and this could not be a Christmas movie, so it's not like that aspect is essential. But the aesthetic is 100% holiday-driven. There's Christmas lights everywhere you look, so it's completely set into the season. And I will say, it has quite possibly the most confusing and perplexing ending that I've seen in a while. Like, it makes absolutely 0 sense towards anything and actually burned up any goodwill that the film had earned up until that point. On the 8th day of Christmas, I got a bad movie. One thing's for sure, and that's if you want to guarantee that your Xmas horror will feel like Xmas horror, you should put the word right in the title, which is what they did for 2017's Once Upon a Time at Christmas. This has a crazed couple, both dressed up in Santa outfits, on the rampage before the big day, and they kill a guy outside the mall, and there's a group of teens, and Jen here is dealing with her parents getting a divorce and starting a new job at the mall as one of Santa's elves. The town sheriff goes to the mayor, but he won't close the mall because it's the holiday season, and...
What is this, Santa Jaws?
I knew I should have gotten you Santa Jaws.
Can we watch Santa Jaws?
We can. Maybe tomorrow.
The couple continue their rampage as Santa and Mrs. Claus, and Mrs. Claus has a whole Harley Quinn thing going on, complete with baseball bat dealio, and they ramp up the violence really quickly, although using an overabundance of really garish CGI blood. And you know, I get it. Sometimes you need it. Sometimes there's a situation where you just can't be spraying fake blood everywhere and you have to step in with some digital help. But when it's non-stop, it's just jarring. And there's an emphasis on the police investigation as the killers ramp up the numbers. And I have to say, as soon as the first killing was like 1 person, and then the second was 2 people, and then the third was 3, I figured out where they were going with it, even though it seems to take the police way too long to put that all together. And even then, it's like they had to basically just flat out tell them the deal by having them find geese dead. And this guy is like, there's 6 geese. 6. And then there's this big scene with the police figuring it out, and it's treated like this big shock and surprise. And the movie is like, oh my god, you're not gonna believe this. And we're all just sitting here like, yeah, we are gonna believe this because we figured that out 20 minutes ago. And this was directed by Paul Tanter, a British director who's made a slew of low-budget horror and action flicks. But more importantly, he's a co-creator of a podcast called Talking Bottom, in which he discusses one of the most absurd sitcoms of all time, Bottom. And yeah, this is super Christmas considering that you have a killer Santa Claus and a Mrs. Claus and a series of killings all based around the 12 days of Christmas. So yeah, totally holiday oriented and no way to change that without altering the fundamentals of what this one is all about. It even got a sequel 2 years later with The Nights Before Christmas, also from Tanter, continuing the story of this version of the Killer Claus. On the 7th day of Christmas, I got a bad movie. Here's a more recent one, since we're bouncing up to 2022, with He Knows, which starts with a guy who takes fashion advice from Guy Fieri, who's an abusive dad to a couple of kids. But that night, someone comes in and murders the guy while wearing an elf costume. And I guess he has Freddy's glove in the sack? He's killing people that show up on his naughty list, and then it's 20 years later, and that little girl is now grown up and she's writing a story about Sammy the elf. And his backstory is that Santa always wanted a son, but never had one. So the elves made him a puppet one. But I guess that elves hate humans, and Santa had enslaved them. And Santa gives presents to the good kids, but Sammy deals out the punishment to the bad ones. And Lynn Lowry is in this, and they have a contentious relationship as Christina heads off to a party with some friends, but gets in a wreck on the way. Sammy then starts showing up around town and killing a bunch of people that are bad, like this drug dealer here, and anyone that comes to his house, which, as it turns out, is a lot of people. But then, shock of all shocks, Sean C. Phillips shows up. But here's the thing, it's not just him in his living room talking into the camera. He's playing an actual role here.
The last thing we need is another holiday slasher.
Yeah, man. I agree.
And yet, here we are.
So, Christina's ex-husband takes her daughter up to a cabin for the weekend, and a bunch of his friends show up, and in between, there's a ton of random family drama going on, plus the absolute dumbest neighbor of all time.
They didn't give you the code? I can put that in for you.
So, you see a person dressed in a dirty Santa suit, with a creepy mask on, standing by a gated community and unable to enter codes, and you're all like, here, let me let you in? And then the killing starts, and I think that the movie is sort of trying to be a mystery and sort of trying to implicate one character as the killer, but the reveal is sort of out of left field and doesn't even really tie into all the stuff that they've built up. And in the end, the entire Christmas aspect doesn't even mean all that much. Like, I know that the Santa lore is what they've built it up as, but it could really just be a generic slasher and nothing would really change in this one. On the 6th day of Christmas, I got another bad movie! This next one had a couple of titles, and one is more festive than the other, and it's Christmas Presents, spelled Presence, but it was only released that way here in the States, and everywhere else it went by the title, Why Hide? It's Christmas Eve, and we're in England, and a group of good friends are meeting for a holiday getaway at a remote lodge out in the countryside. And they're an assortment of kinda uptight folk, and they all seem to kinda hate each other. So the host of the party gives everyone gifts of these underwear that have magnetic fasteners on them for easy access, and the brand is called Why Hide, so that's the reason for that other title, I suppose. And they have a photo shoot in their new lingerie. But then things start to get a little odd as one of them has an encounter in the woods, and the next day the lodge owner shows up and reveals that Mackenzie lost a sibling when she was younger. And the secrets of why that place was booked comes out, and spooky stuff starts going down, and by this point the movie's half over, and I'll confess, I have no clue what the plot is here. And this is the debut feature film of James Edward Cook, although he'd done some shorts before this. And yeah, they all realize that in order to survive the night, they have to face their own individual fears. But I should point out that this plot point arrives at around an hour in. And yeah, it's like they sort of had a bunch of loose concepts to hang a movie around, but no real thread to connect them all. So there's just so many elements that don't amount to anything. Like the fact that the group is mostly comprised of LGBTQ members don't really add anything to the script, which is fine because it doesn't really have to ultimately, but there's a portion where it seems like they want to make a point with it, but then they don't. The whole aspect of the underwear seems important enough for them to name the whole freaking movie after it, but then it's never mentioned again at any point in the film. The old man that appears has this whole ominous thing about him, but he's really just there for like a minute and doesn't really do much. There's some fun visuals near the ending, but it's maybe a little bit too little too late. And it's like in the final 20 minutes, they just went, oh yeah, that's what this is about. It's not even really Christmassy enough, and you really question why they did the retitle, to freaking Christmas presents, because it's only brought up that it's Christmas in the very beginning, and then there's just like a mild sprinkling of it, but then it's not important at all. This could have been any holiday, or even no holiday, and just a weekend away at a lodge. Plus, it has the most head-scratchingly confusing ending of, are they really going to end it like that? Since, I don't know, 2 movies ago. And as oddball as the ending of Sick for Toys was, this one ups that by just being a complete non sequitur. On the 5th day of Christmas, I got this bad movie. Yeah. Okay, this next one better be more Christmas-esque, and it's Jack Frost, but not the one that you're thinking about. This one has no killer snowman and carrot rape. No, this one is from 2022, and I guess is also called Curse of Jack Frost, I suppose, to differentiate itself. The opening talks about a massive battle between Santa Claus and Jack Frost, where his sons are killed, as is his wife, so he finally defeats and kills Jack, splitting him apart and burying the pieces all over. But Claus is betrayed by a man who took one piece for himself. And then we jump to more modern times, and Jack is back, and he's just a dude in a mask, I guess, and he makes someone vanish into snow, and then wraps a woman up in Christmas lights because he's seen the other movie called Jack Frost, and he talks without moving his mouth because, yeah, obvious mask. And okay, this girl vanquishes Jack, and then she's much older, and well, Nicole Wright is here, so this is definitely a low-budget British horror flick. And do you remember what I said earlier about Sarah Cohen? Well, the same thing is true for Ms. Wright. Good actress. Never once saw her in a movie that I thought was good. Never saw her in a movie I thought was awful either. 100 movies which I thought were intensely mediocre. Anyway, Grandma here doesn't celebrate Christmas on account of Jack Frost killing her whole family, but her great Grandy Pepper is having a friend over, and they think that they should go ahead and be festive, much to Granny's chagrin. When her friend arrives, oh, hey, it's Sarah T. Cohen. Great. So this is a double bad sign then. And again, I do want to stress that Cohen herself is not terrible or hard to watch. She's a good actress, just clearly doesn't have a wide variety of quality scripts to select from. Well, somehow, Jack Frost returned, and when the girls all sneak out to have a little party, of course the Frosty one attacks, making zombie slaves and such, and doing Christmas and snow-related attacks on people, budget providing. And this one is another debut on here, and it's from Liana Phyla, her first feature, and she made one more after this, another Christmas-themed film, but a romance one, not horror. But she had previously worked on a number of horror flicks as a first assistant director. 8 of them, in fact, and what's hilarious is that 3 of those are also Christmas-related horror films, including The Killing Tree, and more that I'll talk about a little later, so she has some experience with the genre. On the 4th day of Christmas, I got a bad movie. For this next one, we're going back a while since we're discussing 2009's Silent Night, Zombie Night. And I can't believe I've done this whole list of low-budget holiday films, and this is the only zombie one. The opening sets us right in the middle of a massive undead outbreak right before Christmas time, and there's this cop named Frank, and he and his partner are at odds, and they go back to his house, and his wife is there, and things don't seem all that square between them either. In fact, she's packed up and ready to leave him due to his behavior at a holiday party, and oh yeah, she's having an affair with Nash. These zombies are fast, can be killed by a headshot, and it seems like some of them don't mind feeding on their dead brethren. Frank realizes that at night they have a hard time seeing, and they can mask their scent to be undetectable by the zombies. And things get tense inside the house as the trio have to survive the apocalypse as well as each other. And this one was by Sean Kane, and he's directed a handful of flicks, but seems to mainly work in editing. And one of the little funny quirks here is that the film has small roles for some recognizable faces with Vernon Wells, Felissa Rose, and Lou Temple, Axel from The Walking Dead. And the video box cover has the 3 main characters on it, but those more famous actors' names on top of them, but in an order that makes it look like it's them? It's pretty funny. And yeah, I mean, because the whole film is set in Los Angeles, the whole Christmas aspect is minimal, since you're not going to get those fields of white anywhere here. But again, given that it's in the title, you'd kind of expect it to have more to do with what happens in the film itself, but it really doesn't. The holiday setting is pretty much only talked about in the beginning, without really being a factor throughout any of the rest. And oddly, even though the zombies seem quite spry in the beginning, in the later part of the film, they're Romero-style shamblers. And yeah, there's just not enough Christmas here. And by the ending, it just sort of feels like your standard early 2000s zombie flick, just set on Christmas. On the 3rd day of Christmas, I got a bad movie. Let's hope that we get a little more holiday joy out of this one, and it's 2022's Nutcracker Massacre, and it's definitely set on Christmas. So there's that, and there's decorations up at all. So there's that, and then a guy in a Nutcracker outfit is here, and he murders a guy. And based on the accents, this appears to once again be a low-budget British horror. So I'm just waiting for Sarah Cohen's appearance. But it looks like she sat this one out. But I do recognize this lady from Amityville Scarecrow 2 and Exorcist Vengeance. And this follows Clara here, who's a struggling writer, and she decides to go home for the holidays. And she's just broken up with her boyfriend who was cheating on her. At her aunt's house, that big old nutcracker is there in the corner, and a little bit of Christmas magic brings it to life, returning us to that beginning scene. And it seems like the big guy is treating Clara like his own personal sugar plum fairy and killing anyone that treats her poorly, and does so with that whole Humpty Dumpty trick of using one mask for normal Nutcracker and then just having the actor put on a scarier mask, but then like never showing a transition, so it's obvious it's just a guy in 2 different masks. And he's probably doing it because Clara's basically deep discount Kate Winslet. So like I don't blame him, but as a killing method, the Nutcracker does live up to his name. And in this movie, which up until this point has been kind of bland and inoffensive, then just gives you close-ups of removed scrotums. And yeah, the Nutcracker is made by Dimitri here, who is played by Patrick Bergin, who is someone I never expected to just pop up in Nutcracker Massacre. I looked through his filmography, and he doesn't really slum it like this very often. In fact, the closest thing I could find on this level was all the way back in 2012 with Shark Week. But this guy was in some big stuff. I mean, he was with Julia Roberts in Sleeping with the Enemy, and he was the enemy. Like, the guy was credited in the titles, but here he is, just a movie in which a random man's balls are severed by a nutcracker. Why not? But this one is by Becca Hirani, and she's no stranger to these kind of things, since she's produced a ton of them, and even directed a handful, including several I've featured. She's even got an Amityville under her belt with Witches of Amityville Academy, one of the only Amityville films, possibly the only one, directed by a woman. And she also did Exorcist Vengeance and the second Bad Nun movie, all of which have been on this channel. And yeah, mark this down as another one that is definitely on Christmas and uses some Christmas stuff, but again, with like 3 changes, this can be a not holiday horror flick. And it's really weird, because this is as stock as these things can come, except for the balls. On the 2nd day of Christmas, I got this bad movie. I guess we're going to continue on with ones that have Massacre in the title, but this one's also a little older, and it's 2001's The Christmas Season Massacre. And it jumps right in with some disemboweling. And then we hear the legend of Tommy One Shoe McGrew, kid who was picked on pretty mercilessly, and one Christmas day, after getting an eye patch for Christmas, went insane and started killing his classmates. And each year, in the Christmas season, more of the kids that went to school with him get bumped off. And he shows up again to do a little, oh, geez, I mean, is this going to be a whole penis removal theme or something? Oh, there's then a scene of a woman having sex with a man wearing a giant watermelon piñata on his head, who is then killed by One Shoe. And there's a group of folk that are the last remaining class members, and they try to unite to stop Tommy. Their plan is to hang out at this camp and lure him out and then get him, and they're an assortment of oddities, like the dude who carries a guitar and sings everything instead of talking, and a nerd guy, and a girl who only wears underwear everywhere. But then, when one shoe does show up, they seem completely unprepared and easily fall prey, and it's clear that they were definitely shooting more for the comedy end of the spectrum here, since everything is very over the top, and is possibly the lowest budget of the film on this list, and looks to be shot for a shoestring. And he makes short work of the group, which I guess he would have to, considering that this movie is a little over 1 hour long, and it was directed by Jeremy Wallace, who either produced or directed a bunch of Backyard Fare in the early 2000s, but really only directed this movie and one other, and looks to have taken a bit of a break except for one producing gig in 2018. And yeah, given the title and all, Christmas matters very little to this movie. Sure, it's a backdrop and all, and it serves as the catalyst for our slasher's origin, but he himself isn't necessarily Christmas themed, and it sure doesn't look like Christmas, but it's silly enough and amusing and short, and it doesn't overstay its welcome. On the first day of Christmas, my true love gave to me this bad movie. Our final film here had better damn well be full of holiday spirit, because we're looking at the 2022 film The Mean One, which opens with a sort of recap of the Grinch story, but tells us that's not really how it happened. Seems like the actual story involved Cindy Lou's mom coming downstairs and getting herself killed. And then jumps ahead 20 years, and little Cindy is now grown up, and instead of Whoville, they're going to Newville, and she's still haunted by her memories and is trying to face her fears. And yeah, in case you haven't guessed it by now, this is a low-budget take on the Grinch tale, hence the Mean One title. Like, you know, you're a mean one, Mr. Grinch. And it's tiptoeing around the whole copyright issues, billing itself as an unauthorized parody. So you're not going to hear any of the more official names or dialogue or anything. Instead, you get Cindy watching her dad get murdered. And they tease the notion that Cindy's just crazy, but we finally get our first look at the mean green one, and he's a monster. He really is a heel. And he's played by David Howard Thornton, the guy behind the makeup of Art the Clown in the Terrifier flicks. But no one believes her, and to add to the Christmas flavor, a bunch of Santas show up for SantaCon. And if you don't know that equals trouble, hoo boy, look up SantaCon! And yeah, the Greenie kills with holiday-themed stuff like icicles and candy canes, and there's a cameo from Rachel Winfrey, who appeared in the Jim Carrey version of The Grinch, and she's part of a fun joke that they use to avoid calling the creature the Grinch.
Looks like this.
What is it?
Finch! Order from Mike Finch!
And of course they slip in some other little jokes, like this guy's name is Doc Zeus.
Get it?
And it's like almost decent. It keeps having these fun bits here and there, and a handful of funny moments, but on the whole, it's like it just can't commit to the bit. It feels very much like Blood and Honey in a way, what with the whole unauthorized use of kids' character and horror tale, and it's definitely better than that one, but it suffers from some of the same problems that it seems like it also kind of wants you to take it seriously. If they had just taken those wackier moments and leaned into that, I think that there's a chance that this could have been enjoyable. But as it is, it's an okay watch. It's decent enough, but if they do a sequel, I hope that they just go full camp with it. It is, however, very Christmassy, with the holiday being a pretty integral part of the story, as well as the backdrop. So if you're wanting a halfway decent horror flick that has some spirit going on, it's worth a shot. And I mean, they did this deep cut reference, so I at least have to give them credit for that.
Like some Bigfoot in the snow.
I mean, it looked like a monster to me. Who else on the mean one say yeah?
So there you have it, 12 low-budget Christmas horror movies that I was gifted by my true love. I guess thank you. these were pretty tolerable. I liked actually more than half of these were fun, so I'm not mad about that. These were a good time.
It was a good gift.
I thought so. I thought I was pretty happy. But most of all, I would like to wish each and every one of you out there a happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa. Whatever you celebrate, I want you to have a great time with it and be with your loved ones and enjoy it. If you celebrate or don't, make this a special and wonderful day. I know that I had a great time, and I had a great time with you guys. Hopefully, you will enjoy this video. Let me know down in the comments. Christmas is just in a few days from now. Let's enjoy it. Also, hey, maybe get me the gift of being a patron on patreon.com/movietimelines, and you can help support this channel and help me buy presents for this little monster right here. Or just keep on coming back and watching these videos. I always appreciate that. So from my family to yours, happy holidays. We'll see you very shortly for another great video. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Or like and subscribe.
Happy holidays.
Like and subscribe. This is this gift to you.
You have to. She said.
Like and
She said.
subscribe.